It's a great pleasure for me. I'm Nicolas Pons-Vignon, the director of the CSID, to see this symposium coming through. And let me, without further ado, call our dean, Professor Imraan Valodia, to say a few words of welcome on behalf of the faculty and the university.
So my sort of task is really just to say welcome to WITS, and to say how pleased we are that this important debate about what the national minimum wage dispensation for South Africa should be is taking place here at WITS. Since I'm not sort of exactly a sort of completely disinterested party, I'm going to say a few things about the debate, but I want to be clear that any of the things that I say are not necessarily the views of the ECC, of which I'm a member, but they kind of really my own views about the debate. So I'm kind of really pleased that that we're having this debate, and that we're sharing the sort of findings of a large amount of research that's been done on the question of minimum wages, both in the South African setting and internationally, because I do think that this is a really important debate for South Africa. And I think the kind of issue is important enough for us to kind of really think it through, to kind of collect as much of the evidence as we can, and to make some kind of really informed informed decisions about how it is that we're going to proceed on this question. So I kind of really want to share with you just 4 thoughts on kind of things that I'm kind of hoping in the next 2 days you're going to kind of really think through and kind of exchange research evidence on. So my kind of first question is one of the things that I think we need to think through is this kind of question about South Africa's change from a kind of sectoral based minimum wage dispensation to one that is a national a kind of national minimum wage. And I sort of guess the dilemma that we have to think through is that while there would be sort of good kind of economic arguments, and there might be really good kind of social arguments for why a sort of national minimum wage is a better dispensation than a sectoral one. I think the kind of dilemma that throws up for researchers is that I think we know that the kind of impacts of a national sort of dispensation are going to be felt both at the level of the sector, and they're also going to be felt at the level of the firm. And I think we kind of really have to be clear about what these kind of impacts will be. So for example, it seems to me indisputable that the kind of sectoral impacts on domestic work are not going to be the same as the sectoral impacts in the metal sector. So I'd kind of really kind of urge you in the next while to think through what the sectoral impacts might be. A kind of second point that I think is a kind of really important issue is that we must be careful not to divorce the debate on the wage issue from kind of other sort of complementary sort of policies. So I would urge you to not only look at the labor market issues, but also to think through some of the sort of policy questions kind of around social issues, industrial issues, and we need to think through the full sort of complementary sort of package of sort of policies and what that might mean for what sort of stance we want to take on the national minimum wage issue. So point three, and since you're kind of in the heart of the place which last year showed us the importance of collective action and organization and kind of protest when you're trying to win some gains at the national level. I think it's striking that we're having a kind of debate on a national minimum wage at a time when some of the social actors, and I'd say both the kind of union movement and the business and the business sector are kind of probably at a stage where their kind of organizational capacities are the most challenged that they've been for a number of years. So I kind of urge you to also think through what are the organizational capabilities of the sort of various actors involved in this debate to kind of pursue their interests and to translate their kind of organizational capabilities on the ground into national outcomes for their members. I kind of think that this debate on the national minimum wage throws up some kind of really interesting questions about what the organizational forms in South Africa are and kind of how how sort of best to go about winning whatever sort of gains you want to make. My last point, and sort of given my kind of research interests, I can't but throw out the kind of question about the informal economy in South Africa. From what we know about it, we know that about 30% of the workforce is kind of subsisting in a sort of part of the in a part of the economy that we would think about as the informal economy, and I've not heard any kind of serious analysis on what the impact of a minimum wage would be on that part of the labor market, and I kind of really think we can't go ahead with this debate without thinking about these issues. So I'm kind of really hopeful that you'll have a sort of I mean it's a sort of potentially really interesting issue, and I'm sure that you'll have a sort of quite intense debate in the next few days. I'm kind of really sad that I can't be here with you to be part of the sort of part of this debate. Having made the choice to join the university bureaucracy, I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you now to go off and debate what the kind of appropriate levels of security at our university should be. But I sort of we wish you well, and I want to especially thank our kind of international guests for making the time to be here to share their thoughts with us. And I want to especially acknowledge the work that's been done in WITS in this area. Nicolas and Gillard, we kind of really proud about the work that you've both sort of done in this area. And you know that you have the sort of backing of the leadership at WITS University as you sort of work in this field. So to kind of close all of the best for the next 2 days. And then lastly, an apology. I'm going to have to leave as I sort of say the last word here. So thanks a lot for hearing me out, and sort of best of luck the next few days.
I was also going to offer a few words, but let me be very, very short because we started a bit late. And as you've seen, we have a very dense program. There's really two things I want to say. One is to acknowledge all of the work in the last year that's really led to this international symposium, whether it's the support of our funders, who are more than funders actually, the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Oxfam, are really actually people with whom we've worked and developed a number of ideas and who've supported this program, but also of course the amazing work of the team and the research team that's also been involved very actively in making this possible, and much more than me really the incredible steering of Gilad Isaacs in this project, which I think is really why we are here today. What I really want to say otherwise is a brief reflection on what this project and what this symposium means from the point of view of a research unit based in a university in South Africa. As you'll see in the documents that you've received, this project came out of engagements that we've had with a number of constituencies in South Africa. It's an independent research project, but it is, in my view, a citizen research project, by which I mean that we are trying to probe the evidence, to do research and to provide the best possible basis for decision on such an important question as that of a national minimum wage in South Africa. And I suppose the reason why we felt the need for this is that, like in many other countries, in fact, a lot of the debate in South Africa has largely been dominated by the repetition of a number of doom predictions. This thing is going to have terrible consequences, it shouldn't be considered. Once the principle of considering a national minimum wage was accepted, it became, a number of other predictions. So in other words, a huge amount of the way in which the debate is framed is largely based on very negative newspaper and other forms of articles and other forms of communication. And what we've said is actually we need to probe the evidence that's at the bottom of these predictions. Just to give one example and then introduce a bit more how the seminar is going to be structured. One of the ways in which most of the debates are usually conducted is questioning the impact on aggregate levels of employment. That's obviously very, very important, and that's something that will be discussed in this symposium. But there's another very, very important dimension, and I believe it's all the more important that we are in a country where not only do we have very high levels of inequality, but we know that these very high levels of inequality are very closely related to the functioning of the labor market. And that's the question of how a national minimum wage can actually be an instrument to address some of the hardships that millions of South Africans face on a daily basis. And how it can also be an instrument, and I believe that was the brief that was given to the task team at NEDLAC, to reduce inequality in South Africa. So that's why, unlike perhaps another symposium, we've decided to actually start with these kinds of issues, with issues of inequality, because we believe that that's actually one of the most important, if not the most important questions. All of these questions need to be asked together. Let me not say more, and let the first panel perhaps come forward. And thank you again, everybody who came from abroad, also from South Africa. We look forward to 2 days of intense and informed debate, and hopefully, at the end of these 2 days, we'll all be able to have a better informed perspective on this very, very important issue, which, as a number of commentators have pointed out from very different perspectives, is probably going to be a very, very important reform in the South African labor market. So thanks a lot, and I look forward to listening to our discussions.